the purpose of yoga. So we'll look at Patanjali Yoga Sutra, and in the first chapter, very near the beginning, almost at the very, very beginning, this text on yoga says, this defines the purpose of yoga. It says, yoga chitta vritti nirodha tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam. So yoga chitta vritti nirodha means yoga is the resolution of the mind's activity. And tada drashtu swarupe avasthanam, because then when the problematic activity of the mind is resolved, then you abide as your true form. Anything that doesn't have this at its core isn't yoga. Okay? So, yoga is the resolution of the mind's activity. What that means is the resolving, the clearing away of the problematic activity of the mind. We're going to look at more of what that is later on in today's class. Because when you clear all of those distortions and problematic thinking and confusion and projection, we talked about projection last week, then what remains is your ability to perceive what was always true, which is that you are consciousness. So because we're going to be talking about a yoga pose, meaning Shavasana, let's also look at what Patanjali Yoga Sutra says about yoga poses. What he says is, Prayatna Shaitilyananta Samapatibhyam. This means to master the yoga pose, abandon all effort, and contemplate the infinite. Abandon all effort, Shavasana, and contemplate the infinite, Yoga Nidra. We shall see, okay? So now, I have a couple quotes from two of my main teachers. These are things that they said when I was in their presence, not from a book, but from when I was studying live, chest to chest, or voice to ear with these teachers. And Swami Tattva Vedananda would say, as the body slows down, so the mind slows down. As the body rests, so the mind rests. Now, we could easily flip this. As the body is running, so the mind is running. As the body is multitasking, so the mind is multitasking, and so on. And Swami Dayananda, once when I was sitting with him, another student asked, what is the purpose of asana, of yoga poses? And he said, yoga teaches you to love yourself, starting with the body. So we want to see, does Shavasana and Yoga Nidra do these things, accomplish the purpose of yoga, or have the purpose of yoga at its core? And does it do so? Is it an asana, is Shavasana an asana that is associated with abandoning all effort, contemplating the infinite, slowing down the body to slow down the mind, and teaching you to love yourself, starting with the body? So in the first class, I spent quite a bit of time talking about Soma, or Amrita, the nectar of immortality. The consort of Soma, which is sort of the water principle, the nourishment principle, the opposite of that is Agni. Some of you have taken Agni Soma trainings and retreats with me. This won't be unfamiliar. We're just going to look at these principles in the context of Shavasana and Yoga Nidra. So there are Agni yogas, fiery yogas, and there are Soma yogas, and there are Agni yoga practices and Soma yoga practices. There is an Agni type of lifestyle and a Soma type of lifestyle. So Agni is fire. It is everything to do with achievement, aspiration, and activity. The day is ruled by Agni because one of the main forms of Agni is the sun. And so during the day, we are doing, we are running, we are achieving and aspiring. We are busy. We are full of action. That is all Agni. And it's all happening during the Agni time of day when the sun is out. All right? Now, fiery yogas or Agni yogas are rooted in effort, striving, forcing. They are more athletic and achievement-oriented in nature. So, Vinyasa flow, Patabi Joyce's yoga, anything associated with power. Of course, hot yoga. And anything that has to do with pushing, forcing, striving, stretching, achieving. How many sun salutations can we do? Or how long can you stand on your head, and so on. This is an Agni form of yoga, or an Agni approach to yoga. Agni yogas are mostly for the young. They are beneficial for kapha types, most of whom don't come to yoga. And they help accomplish a certain athletic capacity, a certain aesthetic, a certain look of the body. You want to be toned and so on. Then those people can go for Agni forms of yoga. Too much Agni yoga will be drying, depleting, over-effortful, and overly purifying, which means depleting in the long run, okay? So too much of this will deplete, even wreck the body, and dries up the inner nectar. An Agni practice must be balanced with a Soma practice at least a little bit. And this is why we see even in the most fiery of yoga practices, there is always a recovery Shavasana at the end, or a reward Shavasana at the end. And that is the Soma, a little bit of Soma Nectar at the end of an Agni practice. A little bit of nourishment, rejuvenation, rest, and so on. Okay. So now the Soma yoga practices. We're going to see that Shavasana itself and Yoga Nidra, these are primary Soma practices. And all forms of yoga do Shavasana for the most part. Okay? So the Soma side of yoga I'll read some quotes here. First one is from David Frawley. And this particular slide I'll have in your course materials because usually people love these quotes and want to write them down and see them again and so on. Of course, you'll be able to see it in the recording as well. Yoga properly done is mainly a rejuvenation process, not a detoxification process. Yoga practice is ultimately more a way of non-doing than doing. So non-doing is Soma, doing is Agni. It is more a way of undoing. It is doing less, turning within, letting go, and surrendering. Soma is surrender. Yoga means discovering the healing essence that can draw us to a higher awareness naturally, in which we let go of our stress, our anxiety, our negativity, our traumas, all the emotional factors that disturb us. So we're going to see that this is really what Shavasana and Yoga Nidra does, exactly what he said just there. Inner yoga is that in which we move from activity, Agni, to surrender, Soma, and to cultivate the flow of grace. For the deeper yoga practices, we emphasize the Soma side of yoga, such as restorative yoga, meditation, pratyahara, Yoga Nidra. And Yoga Nidra, he says, is very important for helping us to contact our inner nectar. These deeper aspects of yoga are the calming, rejuvenating aspect of yoga that calms us down, takes us within, brings us to a place of non-doing and pure centeredness. So what I hope you can take from this is that the advanced or the deeper practices, what I call the mature practices of yoga, are the Soma practices. The Agni practices have their place. And even within a Soma practice, there should be some Agni. But the advanced, deeper yoga is not standing on your head for endless amounts of time, is not how many sun salutations can you do, is not about how much can you sweat or how toned is the body. The advanced practices our Shavasana, Yoga Nidra, meditation, seated poses, the poses and practices that take us within and quiet us and help us surrender. Of course, surrender, because Patanjali already said a couple thousand years ago, to master the pose, abandon all effort. Okay? So the Shiva Samhita has a lot of stuff about Kundalini Shakti, which is Agni, and the Soma Nectar. And what this text says is, let the yogi continually drink the nectar of the inner Soma. And actually, this text also says things like, the yogi who contemplates the inner Soma is most adorable to me. Things like this. And then from another one of my teachers, Dr. Lad, he said, Soma nourishes the mind, the universal mind, and the individual mind. Soma is the bridge between the individual mind and the grand cosmic mind, micro, macro. That Soma brings tranquility, love, happiness, and love divine. So micro love and the macro love of everything in the cosmos as divine. Okay. So Soma should sound pretty appealing to you, which would mean that Shavasana and Yoga Nidra will sound even more appealing than they already did. So the principles of Soma, the nectar of rejuvenation, also the Amrita, the reason why I called this course the nectar of Nidra. Soma is associated with the moon, with the nighttime, with the nourishing inhalation of breath as opposed to the purifying exhale, which is Agni, with a downward flow, with the calming nadi, the Ida nadi, which traverses up the spine, with stillness. The Soma is especially seated in the mind and in the heart, associated with nourishment and satisfaction. So the more Soma we do, Soma practices we do, the more Soma we cultivate, the more nourished we are, the more self-satisfied we feel. The more depleted we are, the more we deplete the Soma, the more dissatisfied we feel, the more depleted we are. Soma is associated with bliss. Ananda, remember, the deep sleep state is a mass of ananda, according to the Mandukya Upanishad. Soma is associated with sustenance, with Lord Shiva, also with the Divine Mother, the nourisher of all. Breast milk is a form of Soma. There are Soma mantras. Soma is associated with the inner focus that David Frawley was just referring to, with relaxation, surrender, allowance, and receptivity. All of this is Soma. And the main Soma practices are deep sleep. This is how you collect or gather and hold the inner Soma. Deep sleep. Numero uno means of getting nectar. Restorative yoga. An inward orientation. So practices in which you draw the mind and senses inward, called pratyahara in Sanskrit. Deep relaxation of any kind. So even a massage or a flotation tank, whatever deeply relaxes you, encourages the gathering of Soma. Yoga Nidra, of course. Shavasana, all reclined yoga poses. So lying supine on your back or lying prone face down, those reclined, lying in a horizontal, fully supported position, gather the Soma. And then I've highlighted those or bolded those because those are the ones that we are doing when we do Shavasana and Yoga Nidra. But there are other ways to gather and hold the inner Soma. Seated yoga poses, as I said, prone, face down poses, meditation. Soma emotions. There are particular emotions that are Soma based. Soma mantras. Some of you have learned these things with me elsewhere. Oleation therapy, so oiling the whole body. And drinking oil, eating plenty of fat, and Soma foods. Okay, so let's look at the supine position. Shavasana is the queen of reclined, lying on your back positions. All right, this is the one. And it is the basis, really, the foundation of all other supine poses. All those poses, often, though Shavasana doesn't, but a lot of those lying on your back supine poses are associated with the word supta, right? Supta Garbhasana, reclined child's pose. Supta, supine, because English comes from Sanskrit, right? So all the supta poses, these are horizontal angles